Your home for Ohio State athletics. The Fan. From Learfield, the Ohio State Sports Network brings you Extended Buckeye Postgame. Presented by Encova Insurance. Here's your hosts, Brandon Beam and Tim Hall.
Tough day to be a Buckeye. Ohio State goes down to the hands of the University of Michigan for the second year in a row. It's the first time in 22 years since the year 2000 where Ohio State loses a home game to Michigan 45-23. With all that being said, Timmy, happy Saturday.
Oh, yeah. Happy Saturday, Beam. So this is where we are. It was a whole offseason of nonstop talking about this game, what this rivalry is. A lot of people thinking and feeling that the rivalry is even more back because of the loss last year.
Yeah.
This added a lot more nerves and pressure onto this game, knowing that this is always a possibility. It was always a possibility that you could lose this game. You know, even throughout the whole golden era of Ohio State football, you just mentioned it right there. You go all the way back to the year 2000, all the way back to the year 2000, last time they won a game here, but just the dominance over those 2 decades. It could have happened any time, right? Like we had gone into previous matchups, Beam, thinking that Ohio State, I was just talking with our mutual friend Tyvis Powell, remembering that 2013 game with where Michigan football was. A lot of the games they played when Tyvis was a player, you would have thought Ohio State would drill them, but they made that game tough. You know, when you didn't think they would, they made it closer. They went for the 2-point conversion to win the one game in 2013, right? And he had to pick that one off to save it.
That's what I was going to say. That was the 2013 goal line stand. Brady Hoke, no headset, Tyvis. And by the way, we talked to Joshua Perry on our local show, former Buckeye linebacker, national champion, and he said he missed an assignment on that play, and thanks Tyvis endlessly
Thank you
for intercepting that ball. But yes, to your point.
That's how it can go, right? Mm-hmm. It could have happened at any point in time, but you've just been so sort of spoiled and you've just put it off in the back of your mind and you kind of walk around town with your chest puffed out, even when you got smacked around last year. Still, it's just been, and I'm kind of shifting it more to the fan base because I know that the players and the coaches, they've tried not to take a lot of that bait from, you know, the trash talking that's come from up north, right? Some of their coaches that had left the program about, you know, the players being soft. And, you know, to a certain extent, I'm okay with that. If you really do get pushed around, out toughed, you're out physicaled, which is what that was in 2021 in Ann Arbor. You want to talk the talk, the sake of the rivalry, that stuff is all fair game, right? But the Ohio State fan base, you've just kind of walked around assuming you were going to win this game. Just assuming you would roll these guys up, chew them up and spit them out. And look where we are today. Like, look where this is. There are some big time problems here, you know, like this cannot happen. Like with the way that it's gone, with where this football program is to be 11-0 and to have this kind of talent, the 5-star recruits, you bring in a $2 million defensive coordinator, you play the whole entire season, right? The whole entire season to get to this one spot, to back it all up, to prove it. And 45-23 on your home turf. I mean, I'm no historian, and we're more about living in the recent. Mm-hmm. But, man, Beam, like we were talking before, you being born when you were born, me being born when I was, we're only like 7 or 8 years apart in age. But your memory starts clicking in, I think, for most red-blooded Americans when you're about 10 or 11 years old. You're watching with your dad or whoever, your mom, whoever loves football in the house, and you remember these things. This is as painful and as stinging of any kind of loss, not just a loss to the rival that, of course, dials it up to 100, as bad and as painful as any loss as I can dream up.
Yeah, I think the most painful thing is exactly what you said, going through last year and understanding what happened up in their place, up at the big house, and then this entire offseason and this entire year has been spent in every media opportunity where coaches are getting in front of a microphone, competitive stamina, to get to this game, preach toughness, doing all this, and then you go out like that, knowing what's on the line. Both teams 11-0. One team is 2. One team is 3 in the country. You have everything in front of you. Beat your rival, go to a Big Ten championship game, perhaps then go on to the college football playoff and dream of winning a national championship. And you just got boat race today in your own house. And you're right about that. It's just stunning to say the least about what happened. Sure, I mean, we can talk, 6 ways to Sunday about everything that went wrong in the game, and I'm sure we're going to do that. But it did start out for Ohio State great. You scored a touchdown in the opening possession. You allow Michigan to get a field goal. Ohio State then comes down, stalls out. Okay, in the red zone, field goal, you're up 10-3. You then go next series, you force Michigan on a 3-and-out, then you get the ball on downs, and you're feeling great about yourself. Defense is pinning their ears back, and then all of a sudden, it was a Michigan tidal wave. 3 plays, 70 yards for them, and then a big-time touchdown pass again from J.J. McCarthy, and you had some opportunities that you're going to want back in this game. If that first half, that first quarter goes a little bit differently, maybe we're talking about a different outcome, but you didn't seize the opportunities, at least in the first portion of this game. And then we all know what happened in the latter half.
Wild, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
With the way that it started. I mean, this was a game that started off with a touchdown drive for Ohio State, and you couldn't have been more pleased with that. The possibilities are endless, right? When you score in a game like this, when you honestly don't know how the script is going to go. That's the great thing about these games. They could be supremely defensive when you think both defenses have struggled a little bit and the game's played up in the 40s or 50s, right? It could go reverse of that. But to walk down there and score 12 plays, 81 yards, it's a nice methodical drive to get things going.
Run game is looking great.
All of it, right? You got Chip Trainum. What? Chip Trainum, who could be this unbelievable story. This would have gone down in Ohio State lore, I tell you, if you win this game and you're on the right side. A lot of it, though, I mean, with Mayim Williams and Chip Trainum and Dallin Hayden, not seeing him until later in the game, and I thought, I'd like to see a little bit more of Chip after they gave him the ball early on, and I think he had 4 carries for 23 or 24 yards, nice yard per carry average, and then he kind of goes away, and it's Mayan. Then Mayan's not right, but you had that 4th down chance there where you're a little too far away to kick it. You're at the 34-yard line. You don't go for it on a couple of 4th down conversions later in the game that I think a lot of people are saying, with the way that they can possess the football and with where you are in the field, better chances maybe to just go for it there. Day said in the postgame just felt better about punting it and letting the defense handle it, which was not something that was working for many parts of the game after Ohio State's 10-3 lead. Then all of a sudden you don't get that first down, and then the badness starts to happen on defense where you're in J.J. McCarthy's face. You sell out. You leave Cam Brown alone with Cornelius on the sideline. He makes the catch. Tremendous throw, and we can't tackle. He misses. Sawyer has a chance, and then off to the house. It's 10-10, and then the show began in this one.
Yeah, for sure. Tough day. Let's pause 10 seconds for station identification on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Always and forever, your Ohio State flagship station.
WBNS-FM, HD1 Columbus.
The Fan, Ohio sports destination.
You know what the really crazy thing to me in this game was, Timmy? We look at the box score, and obviously this game got out of hand late in the 4th quarter. And the crazy thing to me is at one point in the game, Michigan had 1 yard on 8 carries. And the front 7 looked swarming. And then all of a sudden, Michigan started ripping the top off the defense, and he completes those open passes. And then all of a sudden, it's a different ball game. If I were to tell you at halftime that this Michigan football team had about 8 to 10 yards running, I don't know exactly what the number was, but I know It wasn't a whole lot.
It was small.
And then they finished the game with 252 rushing yards. How do you comprehend that? What do you take out of that?
You're stacking the box, right? And when you're down, you're even more so trying to stack the box because you've got to get off the field. But when you're going to do that and you can't have the gap integrity that you're supposed to have, you're selling everybody else out. You just need one block. And when you're playing that man coverage that Knowles is playing on the outside, you saw it where Michigan's wide receiver just bends Denzel Burke over on a quick post. He's out of the play. One cut, one block, and then Edwards is out of there. It's bye-bye, 75 yards and a touchdown. And then it happened again on the next drive. And like you said, that's when you had a score that actually looked like Ohio State did belong on the same field as Michigan today. And then by the time it was done, it just took 2 plays like that to make the score look even worse. And boy, you already know what that's going to do for the national college football loving audience that doesn't like Ohio State too much.
Yeah,
and is glad to see this result. They're going to have an awful lot of fun. It's not going to matter if Ohio State was leading this game 20-17, if they were actually more on par with the physicality and the toughness aspect, because that's the thing, Bean. We mentioned that before we hopped on here. This wasn't, aside from that one beautiful drive that really got the football game tilted back in Michigan's favor. I firmly believe that first drive of the second half, 7 plays, 75 yards, and I'm sorry, it was really the second one. So that made it 24-20. That one mattered, but then when it was 31-20, not just getting a double-digit point lead where it's a touchdown, 2-point conversion, and a field goal.
That they did it.
The way that they did it.
7 minutes and 51 seconds off the clock, 15 plays, and 80 yards.
It hadn't felt at any point in the game.
And that was the penalty-laden drive as well for the defense.
Yeah. And then there was that drive offensively when you needed it, and you had the plus side of the field, and then you went and got yourself a 1st and 35 somehow. Congratulations. That's insane how you can figure out a way to do that. But it was that drive for Michigan, the only one that really felt like the game last year. Quick hitters, busted coverage on defense. That's not great, right? That's bad. But that's not like it was just a bludgeoning last year where it's just our offensive line's going to line up. We're not doing anything else but running this football up the middle with, why am I blanking on the guy's name? Their running back, Hassan Haskins, and their other guy last year. But that was the one drive where it was just right up the gut, not just a quick 75 yards and out. It took time. It wore you down. It changed the mood and the tone of the football game.
But it also took the air out of the stadium as well. You could tell
Quieted.
I mean, it was raucous and it was loud in the first half, as it should have been. And then Michigan goes on that touchdown drive, 15 plays, 80 yards, almost 8 minutes off of the game clock. And you could tell whatever juice was left, whatever air was left in that building, Timmy, it just popped right there out of it.
What was the longest drive of the game for the Buckeyes? Opening drive, right?
Yeah, 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
4:50. That's the longest drive. Just a lot of clunky offensive drives for Ohio State today. And despite the numbers that you'll see from C.J. Stroud, they just never were able to get in any kind of rhythm. And again, mention that one drive. Penalties remained to be a thing for this football team until the very end, offensively and defensively.
Today's broadcast is presented by Marathon. Again, the final score, Michigan 45, Ohio State 23. Coming up next, we're going to be joined by former Buckeye defensive lineman, All-American national champion and Ohio State alum, of course, Michael Bennett, as the Encova Insurance Buckeye Postgame Show continues on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Now back to the Encova Insurance Buckeye Postgame Show on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Wolverines have 2 defensive linemen with their hand on the ground. Stroud in the shotgun. Eyeballs the defense with motion coming to the right side. Stroud with the ball in his hands. Looks to throw. Throws middle of the end zone. Caught. Touchdown. Emeka Ibuka. As he got behind the defensive back, Sainristil, who was covering him. 4-yard TD pass. C.J. Stroud to Emeka Ibuka. And the Buckeyes open the day with a touchdown leading 6-0.
It was also promising at that point in time, and then quickly went away. Brandon B. and Timmy Hall here on the postgame show, trying to get you through your Saturday afternoon. All right, right now we're going to head out to the hotline on the postgame show. Check in with a guy who has 3 victories over the University of Michigan. He had 1 loss. We checked in with him last week. And former Buckeye defensive lineman, All-American national champion, Michael Bennett. Michael, how do you comprehend what happened here today, man? Happy Saturday.
Yeah, I guess it's a happy Saturday, Brandon. They're better than us. There's no fluff you can put on it. You go through the stat sheet. They won this game just fair and square, beat us in every facet of the game. I don't know if I'd go ahead and call them soft the way I called them soft last year, but you can't have 100 yards of penalties and give them 2 turnovers and let up a 85-yard or 70-yard run or whatever that was. You don't win games like that in the biggest moment. I don't know. It's gross. It's gross to see in a game like this, a team of this caliber come out and do what they did.
Michael, it was fascinating to watch unfold, right? Because it looked so good early on for Ohio State offensively. You go down, you score a touchdown on your opening drive. Michigan, responds with the volley, comes back here with a field goal. And then after that, Ohio State forced 2 3-and-outs in a row. And the focus the entire week was going to be about Blake Corum. Can he go? And he ultimately didn't get many carries in this game at all. That knee is obviously bothering him. Donovan Edwards was great today when it mattered the most. But this game, Michael, all week long had been about, well, if you let J.J. McCarthy, if you force him to throw the ball, that was going to be a game plan of victory for Ohio State. And, you saw Jim Knowles dial up a lot of blitzes, was very aggressive today. Just your thoughts on J.J. McCarthy and what he was able to do this Buckeye defensive backfield.
So, I hesitate to talk too much about the DBs just because it's hard for me to tell what is scheme and what is just a player getting beat. Mm-hmm. But that's our weakness for a while now. You see these completions of, 15 yards, 20 yards, the contested catch that just the receiver just goes up and mosses our guy. Or you see a 30-yard pass and he's wide open. Like, that's either a lack of discipline or it's a lack of communication. I don't know what it is, but you can't. What happens once, right? And it's like, okay, let's get this right. Everybody lock back in. Let's talk it out. Blah blah blah. But to have it happen multiple times a game and just about every single game, you can't win in November and December and January doing that mess. You can't. But it's one thing to have that happen week 4. All right, we'll iron it out. We'll go back to the drawing board. We'll figure this out. It's November 20, whatever. You can't do that. You're not, if you want to be great, which is what Ohio State expects from itself, which is what Ohio State fans expect from Ohio State, and I know that's what the players and coaches expect, you can't do that stuff this late in the season. And it's frustrating to see year in and year out.
Michael Bennett is with us, guys. He played in this game many times, very successful in this game. The Buckeyes have not been that way now for 2 straight years. Insane to think you got to go back with not playing this game in 2020. We're in a decade now. There's young 3-year-olds out there that are going to not know what it's like to win this game. That's a reality now. You go back to 2019 up in Ann Arbor when Justin Fields had a Warrior type of moment and helped win this game. But you said off the top, Michael, that they were better than us. I'll challenge you on that. We can look up and down the recruits on this Ohio State team, the talent level, the superstars you've got with CJ and Marvin and Emeka. Do you really feel that way, or is that just what the football player in you has to say because you got drilled today? But how badly, you talk about the coaching here, our side versus their side, and how Jim Harbaugh got those guys with a new coaching staff, right, to win this game by 22 points today.
Tim, we can talk about, stars and highlight tapes and all this kind of stuff. If you're not winning football games, you're not better. We talk about talent. This guy's exciting. I am about to curse. I don't care. Win games. It doesn't matter. You could go against a 3-star team, a team of all 3-star kids who came out of high school and weren't highly rated. If they beat you, they were better than you. And that's just what it is. And so, okay, we have talent. We have the guys that are high rated coming out. Well, then what the heck are you doing? Why are they like? Is it a lack of? I'm not gonna start hypothesizing. Like it's a good squad. We've watched them blowing teams out all year. We watched just the highlight reels of C.J. Stroud just doing amazing passes and these receivers doing amazing catches and some really cool runs. We got an O-line that just looks dominant. Win the game. Coming into a Michigan game, it's going to be a grudge match. They don't like you. We don't like them. They've got good talent. They've got big guys who are nastier than us over the last couple of years. It's going to be a grudge match. My teams beat Michigan 3 times. It was a fight. It was a battle. Well, we had that. It was just a battle. Going into it, it's not going to be an easy game. So you stick into it. You keep grinding. And then you try to make as few mistakes as possible. So, we can tout the stars. We can tout all this other stuff. To me, I don't care. Go recruit 3-star guys who are going to win a game.
He is Michael Bennett with us here on the Postgame Show. Obviously very passionate, Mike, and we appreciate you hopping on here. Before we let you go, just scheme today, Ohio State defensively, when you looked at this? I mean, and Jim Knowles was doctoring up a lot of blitzes. He was being very aggressive. When you get into situations like that and the defensive lineman, and we saw it at the very end of the game, right, where Michigan just kind of set sail and was able to do anything on the ground. Donovan Edwards going for a 75-yard run. Then he had the 80-yard run, which was obviously the nail in the coffin for the Buckeyes. Just defensively in that spot, Mike, when you're selling out like that, how difficult is that to deal with emotionally when you see them? We've been good on the rush defense all day, and then the dam kind of breaks.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And that wasn't, that touchdown wasn't a toughness touchdown. That's why I said I wouldn't call this game, we didn't lose this because we were soft. That was just, the safety and the linebackers got swallowed up in the line of scrimmage, and he found a gap, and then there was nobody back there to catch him. And that just, that sucks. That hurts. And the worst part was it's late in the game. That's something that, like, I've had that happen to me plenty of times. And, on the teams that I was on where, the other team, they're full of good players, they're going to get something. But late in the game, you have to kind of, especially if you're trying to form a comeback, you have to be locked in. You have to be disciplined. So, like you said, those nail in the coffin moments, they're really hard to bounce back from. But, until the clock is double zeros, you have to keep grinding.
Michael, the one other thing that really pops off the page in this one was this situation with the running backs. And, Mayan gave it a go out there. That's all well and good. He has been that dog for you at times this year. We've seen that. But to see Chip Trainum out there, that was wild, right? And Dallin Hayden doesn't make an appearance until the second half. Can you make any sense of that?
I can't. The running back situation this year has been disappointing. We have a slew of great running backs. Like I maybe great is a strong word, but we have a slew of very good running backs. And so, I know injuries are a heck of a thing that you can't control. But like you said, Hayden, I mean, he's shown that he can play. He's shown that he runs hungry, but we don't know what happens in practice. We don't know why the coaches make the decisions they do and why some guys see the field and others don't. But yeah, the running back situation, our rush game situation, you would hope for better, and hopefully that's something that the coaches really start looking at in this offseason and how to make that the focus. I know the passing is exciting, and I know it's the way that you win games, but you have to have a strong rushing offense, especially in the Big Ten late in November.
Yep, there's no doubt about it. Michael, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much for coming on with us, trying to answer some of these questions that we're going to continue to do. Try to have an okay day, man. It'll be all right, and we'll check in again soon, all right?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on, guys. Go Bucks.
There he goes. Michael
Thanks,
Bennett,
buddy.
Former Buckeye, defensive lineman, national champion. Could hear the passion.
Quite a passionate response when I pressed him on that because, look, like I get exactly what he's saying. I do subscribe to what he said. You get to play this team one time. Mm-hmm. There is going to be some talk, and the fan base will have a lot of different opinions about it if it goes to non-divisions, which it's going to go to, and when the field expands. There's even been talk. I don't even want to get into that right now. I mean, man, you could have made a case if it was a close defeat, right, and then some other chaos happens, but I don't even want to go down that road right now. College football playoff this year, but I'm talking about in years to come. But you get one game against these guys. So he's right, the talent, and that's, I think, the difference. Talented team versus better team, right? Who's going to get the job done with one opportunity, with one day out of a 365-day year of 60 minutes of football? Who's going to show up, whether that's in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth, whenever you're going to make that little push? Third quarter for Michigan in this one where they had those two drives that flipped the game. Mm-hmm. They were the ones that got it done today, and we got to figure that out.
Yeah, we appreciate him coming on as well. No doubt about it, man. Very, very passionate, of course. Today's broadcast is presented by Marathon. Again, the final score, Michigan 45, Ohio State 23. Coming up next, we're going to check your scoreboard from across the country as the Encova Insurance Buckeye Postgame Show continues on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
The Fan, Ohio sports destination. This is the Encova Insurance Buckeye Postgame Show on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Stroud in the gun with a snap. Sets up at the 50 to pass. Pressure coming. Arches it deep down the right side for Harrison. Caught at the 5 and into the end zone. Marvin Harrison, touchdown on a 42-yard pass play. He caught a strike from C.J. Stroud going down the right sideline. Stroud to Harrison again. Money in the bank. It's 19-17 Ohio State.
They're feeling all right at that moment in time. Marvin the Martian coming out big. CJ throwing a pistol down the right sideline. Unfortunately, the Buckeyes fall short, 45-23. In the second half, things really, really got away from Ohio State. Michigan, again, in their first opening drive of the second half, they got the ball, 7 plays, 75-yard touchdown. Then Ohio State defensively forced a 3-and-out the next segment. And then Michigan went on that long, nearly 8-minute drive in the third into the fourth quarter. They missed a 57-yard field goal, and then back-to-back 1-play drive and then a 3-play drive for touchdowns, which were the ultimate backbreaker for the Buckeyes today against the Wolverines. Frustrating, man. Frustrating, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and Beam, I know you're not going to be finger-pointing in the locker room. Well, maybe you are. That becomes the test, right? When you lose a game like this and you've got some guys that are thinking about what's next, what's the NFL future. You start asking questions. Would a guy like C.J. Stroud want to play in the bowl game that's coming up? These will all be roads that we have to go down, in the next coming weeks. That's life, right? Heisman Trophy, wave bye-bye. Like that's... I think so. Just one guy's opinion here. You'd already seen, Caleb out there in USC, Caleb Williams start to rise up there. But, as far as the finger pointing, offense versus defense today, it's kind of hard, not to look at the defense in this case, right? 45-23. That's kind of the way that it goes here with those possessions. The numbers looked okay offensively. You ran for 143, you threw it for 349. And it was just some of those big plays consistently given up in the run game late, but J.J. McCarthy really getting the job done early on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, we weren't the only college football game in town. Well, in Columbus we were, but there's a lot of other stuff happening around the college football world. Hit us with the music. This segment is so much better to do when Ohio State wins. What you got up first for us, Timmy?
Well, why don't we'll be in the top 25 here. We're going to go down to a non-conference game, the Clemson-South Carolina rivalry game. A lot of rivalry games. It's that week of the season, Beam. Listen to how this one finished up. Again, South Carolina versus Clemson.
Rattler takes a knee.
That is it, folks.
He throws the football up in the air, and the streak is over. Carolina has defeated number 7, Clemson, 31-30. They go back-to-back in top 10 wins. First, number 5, Tennessee, and now number 7, Clemson.
Yeah, South Carolina had that 31-30 lead, and Clemson just had some chances, continued to not be able to get the job done. So it is the Gamecocks, Todd Ellis from Learfield, with the call right there, Beam. Unbelievable, right? And I don't know if Clemson, they were ranked 8, if there was a real shot there. I don't think there was. Now they're, officially out of the picture.
I thought it was interesting, too, going back to this South Carolina team, because last week they hammered Tennessee.
Right.
It's a 63-38 victory for them. They go into Death Valley and win 31-30. And I thought Shane Beamer after the Tennessee, and I didn't get to hear what he said after this game, said there is no curse on this program. We need to stop walking around like there's a curse. We're going to build it back up. That's as good of a way as you can end your season in the regular season. Now they're going to play in a bowl game for South Carolina as it gets.
And Spencer Rattler had kind of been this forgotten quarterback, right? He was a Heisman front runner. He was an Oklahoma cast-off. And then these last 2 weeks, he's been big time. Easily his 2 biggest games since he transferred. He was crazy last week, had 360 yards this week. Number 1, Georgia. Beat their in-state rival. Georgia Tech really can't compete with them at this stage. 37-14 was the final there. We go to some live scores here. Number 14, Utah, leading Colorado 28-0. 3:56 left to go in the second. They had that extra loss, though, so the Utes are 8-3, but still pretty good football team. Number 11, Penn State, beating Michigan State 14-0. That one heading towards halftime. One of the other unbeatens out there, Beamer, college football playoff bound, potentially. Number 4, TCU, on top of Iowa State, 27-7. Iowa State's 4-7 there in last place in the Big 12.
Crazy.
We looked how many one-score losses they've had for Matt Campbell's consistent program. You've got Oregon versus Oregon State. That's the old Civil War up in the Pacific Northwest. It's 14-10 Ducks at halftime there. Oregon wins. they're in the Pac-12 championship.
Yes,
it's that simple for them.
That is correct. So you can have a bunch of scenarios coming out of the Big Ten West. A little bit easier to follow in the Pac-12 and what happens with Oregon. By the way, Iron Bowl happening. Alabama all over Auburn right now, 35-14. That game is at the half as well.
Alabama and Auburn, the old Iron Bowl. Yep, Kentucky and Louisville playing each other as well. Wildcats up over the Cards 23-7 at the moment. And you mentioned the Big Ten. How crazy was that yesterday?
Yeah.
Iowa had the shot to just win and get in. Nebraska, were they up 24-0 or was it 24-7? Either way, they were up big. They were up big. I know it was 17-0 at one point.
It was 24-0.
I think it was 24-0, and they get the job done. They win 24-17. So the Huskers, they're 4-8. Iowa 7-5. Opens up the doors though for some crazy stuff. Maryland beat up on Rutgers 37-0 today. Puts them at a nice 7-5. They had a great game against the Buckeyes last week, but didn't get the job done. So the old Oaken bucket, right? Purdue is in a win and go to the Big Ten championship situation. They're beating Indiana on the road. Third quarter is underway. 10-7 Boilermakers. Minnesota, Wisconsin. This one is involved in the action as well. Minnesota is leading on the road 10-6. 11 minutes left to go in the third quarter. About that same time in the third, Illinois is beating Northwestern 20-0 up in Evanston. All games, if Purdue loses, we're going to have to go down the list, Beam, and keep an eye on all three of those football games to see what happens, but it could hurt your brain. Hey, the Buckeyes aren't going, so what does it really matter at this point?
Here is your Big Ten West scenario, all right? Here it is. Iowa is in if Purdue loses the Oaken bucket and Illinois loses, which can't happen because they beat Northwestern. All right, so Purdue is in with a win, and again, Illinois is in with a win and a Purdue loss. So it just hurt my brain trying to comprehend what is going on right there. Again, Illinois up 20-0 over Northwestern. If they win and Purdue loses the Oaken bucket, then the Fighting Illini will be representing the Big Ten West.
Wow. I mean, it's insane.
Nuts.
It's insane. It's a whole lot easier over here in the Big Ten East. A whole lot easier when you got Ohio State and Michigan at 11-0. I think wasn't it even set before going into last week's games? It didn't even matter.
Yes.
Whatever they did against Illinois or Maryland would not have even mattered. You would have come here to the shoe, and the winner would have gone to the Big Ten championship game. Because even if a loss happened for either team last week, you would have had a tiebreaker there, and that would have been that. Two were in the MAC today, Beam. Kent State beat Buffalo 30-27 in overtime. Akron beat Northern Illinois 44-12. Kent State's 5-7, Akron 2-9. Not a good year.
How about your games coming up here later on tonight? Number 5, LSU. They travel to College Station and Kyle Field to take on the struggling Texas A&M Aggies. You also have number 22, UCF at South Florida. Big one tonight. The 15th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish head out to the Coliseum in Los Angeles to play the 6th-ranked USC Trojans. And that's a big, massive game for Heisman implications and college football implications, college football playoff implications in that one as well. 7:30, Tennessee heads to Vanderbilt, and they're going to be without their quarterback, Hendon Hooker, who tore his ACL, unfortunately, last week. 8 o'clock, Kansas heads to Kansas State, Timmy. That one is the 12th-ranked Kansas State hosting Kansas in that one, and then Washington at Wazoo tonight at 10:30.
Apple Cup late tonight. Yeah, Michael Penix Jr., nation's leader in passing yards, almost 3,900 going into the game, so he should go over 4,000 for the season.
Today's broadcast is presented by Marathon. Again, the final score, Ohio State gets defeated by Michigan 45-23. Coming up next, we're going to let you hear from head coach Ryan Day as the Encova Insurance Buckeye postgame show continues on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Always and forever your home of the Buckeyes. Home of the Buckeyes. The Fan. Now back to the Encova Insurance Buckeye postgame show on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Michigan comes into the Horseshoe today, defeats Ohio State 45-23. You know, I was year 2000. I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
Last time that this happened.
How about that?
8 years old.
How was that 20-year period? It was 2000 to 2019.
Pretty good. It's a pretty nice little run. Yeah, pretty nice little run. 2
losses. Pretty solid, right?
Yeah, without YouTube, I don't remember that game. The 0-2 game I remember pretty vividly. I remember Holy Buckeye, but Other than that, 2002, the national championship year, was really my first recollection of remembering games live in time.
Well, in the 11 season, too, you're kind of out of it as a football team. I mean, you're a 6-win football team. So that's not really like this year. You know, if we're going to talk about stinging losses.
Everything on the line this year.
Everything is on the line. You know, we talk about where Ohio State football is, right? And what the expectations are. And it's rare that you get that chance where you're 11-0 and you really do feel like you've got a national championship squad, and then it just gets squashed right there. So Ryan Day, the head coach, we go back to some of this. What happened out there today?
When you looked at the first half, physically, we were playing really well up front, especially on defense. I'm not sure how many yards they had, in the first half running the ball, and then they had those 2 long plays, and then in the second half it was more of the same, too many big plays. That's really, when you look at the game, I don't have the stats in front of me, but it was just way too many big plays. And on offense, we had too many penalties, and it got us off schedule, and we just didn't do a good job converting on third down. And you combine all these things together, and then it gets out of the hand at the end because we're probably throwing the ball too much.
If you were wondering about chunk plays for the University of Michigan today, I've got the stats right in front of me now. 5 through the air, 4 on the ground. The 5 through the air, Timmy, combined for 237 passing yards. The 4 on the ground were 191 rush yards.
Is your chunk 20 or more or 25 or more? What's
that
your
would
chunk?
Be gain of 15 or more through 15. The air and 10 or more on the ground. But those chunk plays through the air were 33, 15, 69, 75, 45. On the ground, 12, 19, and then 75 and 85.
Plenty chunky enough for me. Man. And it comes back again. I don't want to belabor the point, but this Jim Knowles defense, if we're going to talk about this defense being fixed from last year, it had to pass the test of this game. Mm-hmm. And too many times we heard all about the risk reward, right? And being an aggressive style defense.
Got burned.
I thought, and sometimes you had them in known passing situations and you didn't need to be all that aggressive, because if you could be aggressive on first and second down and win on those downs, put them in that bad spot, well, then you win the luxury of sagging off a little bit and forcing their hand. And we hadn't seen J.J. McCarthy be real good when guys have been covered, But if you got some man coverage and you give that receiver a chance to get a yard or two of separation, and a lot of times it was more than a yard or two of separation, where you blitzed everybody, and yet still, Lathan Ransom didn't have a good game. He's, 6 yards off of the tight end where they throw the ball over the top. You rushed 6 on that play, and you didn't get to J.J. McCarthy, and then you still hit a wide open touchdown pass in the end. So it was just too many times that they got beat. But Ryan Day knows it's all going to come back on him.
We'll figure out what's next. I don't know exactly what is next right now, but that's life at Ohio State. And, I certainly know what this game means to everybody. And so, when you lose, it all comes back to me. I'm the head coach, and that's what probably hurts the most.
He had a quick response to the issue of punting late in the game, when you had some fourth and shorts, 4th and 3, right around midfield, and then on your own side of the field, but still knowing that it's the fourth quarter and Michigan just had an 8-minute drive. Do you feel like you've just got to keep the ball in your offense hands to catch back up? Here's what he said.
Well, we're always going to be aggressive, but at those times I felt like it was the right thing to do was to punt.
Just felt that it was the right thing.
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to have plenty of time here in the near future to be able to discuss this, but yeah, it was. I know that your rear view is kind of 20/20 when you look at it, but I'm sure that he wants some play calls back. You just go back to that first touchdown drive and how it looked so great, and then for whatever reason, you kind of got out of rhythm and couldn't do it. You had a couple of screen plays that were broken up on the wide receiver screens. That's a whole. I know it's an extension.
It
of
worked
the run
early,
game.
right? Yeah,
it worked early. Wasn't going on. Michigan were kind of jumping there. They were kind of loading the box. Weren't able to get the run game established, and then poof! All of a sudden, you find yourself in a massive hole. Again, today's broadcast is presented by Marathon. Again, the final score today: Michigan comes into Ohio Stadium and hammers Ohio State 45-23. Coming up next, we're going to wrap things up as the Encova Insurance Buckeye Postgame Show continues on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield. Buckeyes lose to the Wolverines, first time in Ohio Stadium since the year 2000. By the way, if you want some second half numbers here, this might not be safe for work. Second half, 28-3 in favor of Michigan on the score sheet. 316 total yards for the Wolverines, 177 for Ohio State, 242 rushing yards for the Wolverines compared to 19 for Ohio State. No penalties for the Wolverines, 6 for 71 yards for the Buckeyes, which were crucial, and drive killers, of course, and we all know that. Third downs, Wolverines 4 of 8, 50%. Ohio State only going 1 of 7, good for 14% on third down conversions in the second half. 9 yards per play for Michigan in the second half, 5.7 for the Bucs.
That bad. 9. Well, I mean, I guess when you got a couple of 75-yarders, right, that's going to help the average. It all counts, though. And, honestly, thing one, aside from letting that Michigan coaching staff get the better of you today, and that's a big problem. You talk about legacies being on the line in this game. Ryan Day now, with the predecessors that he's had, that's a thing. That's a big thing now. With Jim Tressel having the record he had, Urban Meyer, the guy that hired you, basically, right, gave the keys over to Ryan Day, coached under him, 7-0 against that team.
That guy's got a goose egg in the loss
under
column.
500 now against that team up north, and 2 in a row. What is going to be on the line next year if they're going to have a similar 11-0 type start? And it's going to be another type of situation where none of that is really going to matter until you get to possibly 12-0 and get the job done in that one. Beam, they have got to get better cornerback play if they are going to play this style of defense in a championship level. It's one thing about beating up Rutgers in Indiana and maybe even beating Penn State on the road, right? If you're going to get a brilliant game from a JT Tuimoloau type of deal. You have got to get rock-solid play from corners if you were going to sell out and be aggressive like this. There's 5 DBs out there on the field. We've got to improve the level of play from that part of the football team. No more busted coverages or guys getting burnt back there. That's got to pick up.
All right, it's that portion of the program. Time to dole out some leaves.
It's time to hand out some Buckeye leaves.
Obviously a tough one here. Seniors, it was senior day. It's tough to get over emotionally, right? I mean, you're running out, you're embracing your parents, you're embracing whoever's going to be on the other side. And, for what those guys have given to this program, Timmy, I saw a great shot of Cam Babb running out of the tunnel as well. What that guy has meant for this university, what he has done for this program, his story individually.
Totally.
Seniors, I mean, last game playing in Ohio Stadium, obviously not the way that they won out. But it's tough. It's tough to deal with.
Guys like Tommy Eichenberg with broken hands, making the plays out there that he's made all season long, had a huge tackle on third down when the Buckeyes were still in the game there, get the ball back. Hopefully some good things could have still happened. They didn't, but he was doing his part. Zach Harrison had a couple of deflections there at the line of scrimmage that were also big. CJ, he played hard. He played hard out there. It just was a clunky game flow offensively for the Buckeyes. So, Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr., a couple of 100-yard days. It's weird, I look at these offensive numbers, Beam, and it just doesn't quite add up. CJ had the couple of picks late, but you're kind of playing behind schedule and trying to make something happen, so I get that. But I'll throw something Emeka and Marvin's way.
No Ruggles Buckeye leaves for him.
Yeah, sure.
Guy's a weapon.
Sure.
All right, Timmy, it's a tough one today. I don't know when we're going to get to do this next. Buckeye hoops on the horizon.
It's going to be another Rose Bowl, Beam.
Unless
January.
Something absolutely crazy happens, and I don't even want to get myself mentally there.
I don't think it's gonna.
See you in the new year, then, possibly.
Yeah, we'll see it. Beam.
Depending on what happens.
Everybody deal with this the way that you deal with this. However you want.
By any means necessary.
As long as it's safe.
Timmy, had a great season. We'll look forward to doing the bowl game for Ohio State. At least one more game on tap for them. The executive producer of Ohio State Radio Sports is Skip Mossick. On behalf of our studio producer, Panama Ted Holbrook, and for Timmy Hall, I'm Brandon Beam, inviting you to join us Tuesday night at 6 for Buckeye Roundtable presented by Byers Auto, and then a Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. for Buckeye Basketball's Ohio State be at Cameron Indoor, face off with Duke. Stay tuned to the station for more information on Ohio State's bowl game in the day and time of our AEP Energy Buckeye pregame show. Today's broadcast was presented by Marathon. Ohio State football has been brought to you statewide by Encova Insurance, your Central Ohio McDonald's owner-operators, and by Bob Evans Grocery. Once again, the final score today from the Horseshoe, Michigan 45, Ohio State 23. Thanks for listening. This is the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
You've had a long, hard day of consuming football.
Football is all I got.
And as we all know, the only way to prevent a hangover is to have another round.
Don't that feel good when your crowd behind you? You know what I'm saying? Let's give them something to cheer for now.
This is Fan College Football Game Night.
Sponsored by the Buckeye Law Group.
Early game scores and recaps, along with previews of the big night games. Here's Chops and Reeser.
Here's Chops and Reeser.
The guy just said that. Hello, good evening.
There's a big sigh for everybody. I'm sure you're all doing it with me. It's, especially for me, really frustrating 48
You've
hours.
had a really rough go of things. From a football fandom-wise, you have your health.
Both the teams I cared about, all they had to do, and they were in the Big Ten title game. All they had to do was win. They were in the Big Ten title game.
Yes.
And they both lost.
Yes.
But the one we're focusing on most because it's more important. It's not like Iowa was going to do anything this year anyways. Nebraska. The Buckeyes lost 45-23 today. And, you know, watching the game, I didn't feel as bad as I did last year. And I think last year was...
This year was a worse loss.
It felt worse at the end. But the Buckeyes were in it longer. You know what I mean? Like, Michigan led a lot in last year's game. And in this one, you're going through it and you're like, oh, there was still hope going through it with the Buckeyes. And you know what? As I look through the stats and I look at this final score and I look at 21 points from Michigan in the fourth quarter, and you know what? It might be a bigger ass whooping this year than it was last year. And you knew it. Coming in, you made changes to the coaching staff. You paid Jim Knowles $2 million. Where's my $2 million? I can go and do nothing for you. And this is what happens.
Well, I do think that this game played out much differently than last year's, and that's obviously because Michigan's defense, I think, was so much better than last year's was. I think a lot of what happened...
Which is crazy because they shouldn't be.
No. I think a lot
they had better players last year.
I think a lot of what happened with Ohio State was kind of death by their own maybe devices in the first half, which left Michigan hanging around. And then because Michigan was just the tougher team.
Can I pause you for 1 second?
Sure.
I think that's a Ryan Day symptom.
Oh.
I think Ryan Day falls into his own crutches easier than some coaches we've had here at Ohio State.
I don't necessarily want to blame Ryan Day for the drops. I don't want to blame Ryan Day for the penalties. He had 9 for, 97? So almost another football
He also
field
can't help that running backs are injured.
Weeks. So, right. He also can't help he doesn't have his best player. But there was, through all 4 quarters, it didn't feel like their asses were on fire. Like, at no point did it feel like they understood that this is Ohio State, Michigan. This is the game. This is, you've got to be go. I mean, you've got to be at 10 or at 11 every single quarter, almost every single time you're out there. And it showed late. And obviously with those 2 75 and 85-yard touchdown runs by Donovan Edwards that really took the score and put it away from what the actual game for 4 quarters was. Mm-hmm. Because there just wasn't this fire under Ohio State's ass. And that could be a Ryan Day symptom to where he's trying to take this team that's built on finesse and that's built on speed and try to make them tough for 365 days after getting out-toughed last year in Ann Arbor. Because I don't necessarily know if this Ohio State team could ever be as tough as Michigan.
And it's like a football thing, like, oh, we want to be tough. We want to put our nose...
At what cost?
To the grindstone. We want to put our hand in the dirt and beat the team in front of us. And it's like, but why? You don't always have to do that.
You don't have to.
That's not the Ryan Day has clearly like cracked the code in some ways that like, hey, you can just be more athletic.
I don't know if LSU was necessarily the toughest team when Joe Burrow won the national championship.
Right.
They sure as hell were
circles around them.
The best. And you can and again, Ohio State survived many times this year because they out-talented the team across from them, not because they were the toughest team that day. Look at Penn State, look at Maryland, look at Northwestern, look at Notre Dame. Like, this was just, we're more talented than you, so we're going to win this football game.
Use your advantages to your advantage.
And I think that became too much of what this team wanted to try to be rather than what this team was. And there's going to be, of course, second guessing between, for the next 365 days, because the Rose Bowl is the consolation prize. And that seems like a dirty phrase to utter, but that's where this program's at right now. It's where this program was at last year. That's where this program has been at for the last 20 years. The last time Michigan came into Ohio Stadium and got a win was 2000. It's 22 years ago.
It's one of those things where, let me list this for you. Michigan had a field goal in the first quarter. In the second quarter, they had a 69-yard pass to Cornelius Johnson from obviously J.J. McCarthy.
3 busted plays in the first half.
They had a 75-yard pass from J.J. McCarthy to, again, Cornelius Johnson. They had a 45-yard pass in the third quarter from J.J. McCarthy to Colson Loveland. They had a Donovan Edwards 75-yard run for a touchdown. They also had a Donovan Edwards 85-yard run for a touchdown. And there's a certain point where it goes, well, except for those big plays, the defense played pretty well. But when there's that many, it starts to turn into, this is a problem.
It is.
You can't give up this many big explosive plays to a team, and you only score 23 points on top of it. It's like, if they had the game that USC and UCLA had last week, and they were trading haymakers throughout the entire game, okay, you could live with that. Like, hey, this is a great game. Both teams are 11-0. We're really going at it. But it wasn't that. It was Michigan doing the explosive plays.
Yes.
And the thing that bothers me the most about this game is that even after it, I still believe that J.J. McCarthy is not that guy.
I think he's a good quarterback.
And you made him look like that guy.
You made him look all world. And that was the big playability that everybody going into this game had thought Ohio State would be putting on Michigan, as opposed to Michigan putting on Ohio State. The talk going in was Blake Corum, was if he wasn't going to be able to go, then their offense was going to be ineffective, putting it mildly. And for a lot of the first half, it was. And I think that is some credit to Jim Knowles and the job that he's done with the defense that he has. But to your point, the big plays, and you listed 5 of them. I'm just going to focus on 3 of them, the ones that happened in the first half, because it allowed
the fourth quarter ones. Whatever, game was over.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but it allowed for those things to happen at the end because this Ohio State team, not tough, gave up.
They gave up.
They gave up in the fourth quarter. That's where you saw an errant throw I don't know if that C.J. Stroud's first interception would have made it into the Dr. Pepper thing that they're not going to be playing on next week.
Should C.J. Stroud be doing the chest
passing that? Like, that was them giving up. The first 3 broken big plays that happened in the first half, the 2 by Cornelius Johnson, were symptoms of a defense that just isn't I don't know if the ingredients are all there to do what Jim Knowles wants to do. Breakdowns in execution. Certainly the Cam Brown one on the first Cornelius Johnson touchdown was awful coverage, and then a complete broken tackle, and you don't have any safety help by design. And then on the play where Ohio State sends everybody, and J.J. McCarthy's still able to go out there and look like Michigan quarterbacks of old that could scamper around on you.
Should we just spend the rest of the show counting to $2 million? One
by
one?
No, because, look, I do think that that was the right move in bringing Jim Knowles in, and I think that this defense is better from last year.
It's definitely better.
I will say, to counter the point made by CJ at the end, because you've likely by now heard comments by Ryan Day, heard comments by Jim Knowles, heard comments by CJ Stroud, and that I don't even want to paraphrase because I'll just read the direct thing from Stroud. I don't think one game defines us. I don't think this game defines our team. It does. It defines
and it's not just
everything.
One game. It's 2 games now.
It's 2 games. But even if it was just this one, had they had won last year, and this is just on its own little island, this is everything. This is everything you play for. This is it. And so to hear those comments from Stroud echo what I think's a bigger problem with this program not having an identity and trying to be fake.
We don't start our leisure show on the weekdays with we don't give a damn for anybody else. No, we start it with we don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. And that's how we all felt going into this game. And they go into it and they look flat-footed. They look like they're not ready. It's weird because it was A symptom both teams had last week, where they went out and they scored on their first drive, and it's like, all right, we're there.
Scripted opening drive, baby, just like the Browns.
It looks like they're going to be able to roll this. We know what Ohio State's doing, and against Illinois, we were like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. We know what Michigan's going to do. Ohio State then did that this game, and it was like, all right, that all looks like it's clicking, and then it didn't click the rest of the game, and I don't know what to make of that as far as offensively goes. I think the offense, as much as I sort of derided Jim Knowles and his defense there in the beginning, and the big plays are very concerning, I think the offense did a very big disservice to the defense.
Yes, I agree with you.
The start of the second half is especially where that happens. The defense goes out there and they force 2 punts out of Michigan. And the offense does nothing with the first one. Yep. And the second one they get 30 yards worth of penalties on a 1st and 10. They started in plus territory. And that was when it was like, all right, let's really open this game up. We're going to take control. Instead, 30 yards worth of penalties. You said this on Friday's show on Bishop and Friends, that penalties were going to be a big deal. You don't want to see those kind of penalties the way they did against Maryland. And instead, they did it even worse. Now, there is a bit
the false starts, the personal fouls, the pass interference plays, all of those were, in my opinion, a severe lack of discipline and focus. Something that had been echoed, or something that had been talked about by whoever we heard from Ohio State all week, about how their preparation, about how their focus, about how their discipline all had to be there to win this game against Michigan.
Mm-hmm. There is a bit that does feel like, hey, I don't know if you were calling pass interference the same on both teams, but that's not an excuse. It's not like Ohio State needs pass interference calls to move their offense down the field. That Ronnie Hickman
pass interference call was legitimate because he just didn't turn around and look for the ball.
There were 2 or 3 where it's like all you had to do was turn around and they wouldn't have called it on you.
That's a coaching thing. That's a discipline thing. Yep. That's an awareness thing that, again, if you're preparing properly all week, you're going to be ready for that. You're not going to let J.J. McCarthy in a Michigan offense that everybody had been saying, even Michigan going into this week knew how important Blake Corum was and is to that team because that's their identity. They weren't trying. They were forced in a situation to have to be somebody else this week because they didn't have Blake Corum.
Do you know how many rushing yards Donovan Edwards ended up with?
216.
9.8 yards a carry.
Yeah. And a
now
lot
he had 2 big runs in the fourth quarter.
At the end, but those to me were indicative of the problem because I don't give a damn. You talk about we don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. This team doesn't give a damn for the actual Michigan game.
I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, and I mentioned it on Friday. I don't understand why a 3 linebacker set is installed in this defense, and we didn't see it today. I don't get it. I don't know. Michigan was going to try to run the ball. J.J. McCarthy is arguably more effective on the ground than he is through the air.
Yes.
Why aren't we it's not enough to just bring a safety down and be like, that's kind of our third linebacker. No, bring in a third linebacker. Now, maybe they don't have the guys for that. And you know what? I think call BS on that. Okay. Ohio State should have 3 linebackers. Well, they're Ohio State. Look at these 2 jerseys behind me. That's A.J. Hawk and Bobby Carpenter. Those are linebackers. I used to produce a show with James Laurinaitis. That's a linebacker.
He is.
We're a linebacker school. Where are our linebackers?
One was playing running back.
That's true.
One was a running back that converted to linebacker.
I said that today. I was like, it's really weird that our best tailback today is a linebacker playing running back, and our second best linebacker is a running back playing linebacker.
So outside of that, you don't necessarily have the dudes to play at those positions.
We're Ohio State.
Okay, I will absolutely hear that. That is a conversation likely to be had in the offseason. I think now just the focus on what the hell happened with this game, you can track to many games before this, even to the Notre Dame game, and where this defense, had fixed some of the issues that plagued it last season, but was still overall hampered by the big play, that was still overall hampered by dumb penalties at the worst times. And then this offense, no sense of urgency was the phrase that I was looking for at the beginning of the show. At no point in this game, or really no point in the season outside of one drive against Notre Dame, did I feel like this team had any sense of urgency.
The big long drive against Notre Dame in the fourth quarter.
That was the sense of urgency because that I think the team realized then it's our ass. At no point today did I feel like, watching this team do anything, that it felt like this is our ass on the line. Because it was, and they showed their ass.
You were off on Monday, but this came up for me in the Maryland game, and I think it's apparent here. I mean, C.J. Stroud, he still ends up with 349 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he also there's 2 picks.
And he had some really bad drops, very uncharacteristic, from Marvin Harrison, who had his first collegiate drop, and then Cade Stover had 3 really, really bad ones.
That's where it comes is I think sometimes this team, they get really used to playing 7-on-7 Madden on rookie type ball.
Yeah, 5 wide go.
And they don't understand when they get adversity. They don't understand when they get pushback. It's like those guys are on scholarship too. You're going to play good players. It's not always going to be an easy game. It's fun when it's an easy game. And, we can all rah-rah and go, oh, look at the Buckeyes. They're just rolling people. Cover City. Don't get me started on the picks. But
I had Michigan +8. just to say.
You had the Buckeyes winning by 7. Don't act like you had Michigan
You're
+8.
right, I did. And I would still say that Ohio State's the better team than Michigan.
But you can't say
Can't, because the results on the field have to matter.
That's why you play the game.
The tougher, more disciplined team that wanted it more, that, as the kids say, had that dog in them, whooped the better team's ass.
Harbaugh's got that dog in him.
He might, and he might be in Ryan Day's head. He might own real estate in Ryan Day's cranium.
Does Ryan Day have that dog in him? I don't know.
So he's on the hot seat.
Yeah.
We can have that conversation. Now, nobody's going to talk about firing the head coach of Ohio State right now. And for those calling for Luke Fickell, look, you want to talk about a conservative play caller, and Luke Fickell's going to be the answer? Likely no. And also Mike Vrabel's not giving up a premier job in the NFL. He's one of, 6, 7 of the best coaches in the NFL to recruit at a college level.
We'll get into it next. Is Ryan Day on the hot seat? Plus more from the college football coaching carousel. Up next, Fan College Game Night right here on The Fan.
You're listening to Fan College Football Game Night.
Sponsored by the Buckeye Law Group.
Here's Chops and Reeser.
College Game Night right here on The Fan. Chops and Eric Reeser hanging out with you.
You heard it first. I'll say it again. Fans College Football Game Night sponsored by the Buckeye Law Group. Injured after a car accident? Remember, after 911, call 411. 1-800-411-PAIN.
All right. I think it's, 2 losses in a row to Michigan. I think it's fair to say the seat is hot for Ryan Day. Are you on the hashtag Fire Ryan Day train?
No, I think that's silly.
I think it's an overreaction. I think there can be better people for the job, but I'm not sure that they're available. I'm not sure you can hire them.
I would tell this to Ohio State fans wanting to hashtag Fire Ryan Day because he is hashtag John Cooper 2.0. The anger and angst and fear you are feeling right now and where this rivalry has gone after 2 straight losses to the rival, and now you're starting to feel like they did during the Urban Meyer years. This can't be a Fire Ryan Day because who's going to be his replacement?
And to be fair to Ryan Day, he's only had 1 other loss in the last 2 years. Like, it's not like it's falling. It's not like the wheels are falling off, but there's
heat on the seat.
I'm leaning
understandably
that way,
so, because
I'm not like fully in his corner right now.
And for me, a lot of this comes with not necessarily the loss, because if this is a 35-28 loss to Michigan, or if this is a 24-23 loss to Michigan today, I'm a little less on Ryan Day than I would be, but because he is the head coach, a 45-23 loss where you give up 14 points off of what basically are 2 gigantic touchdown runs shows that the rest of the team doesn't have what it takes to win a national championship.
It does feel like the way they've lost to Michigan in the last 2 years are a symptom of Ryan Day being the head coach. And I don't want to just lay blame on him completely, but you are the head coach.
Last year's tough because of a lot of different factors.
I also don't think they could properly evaluate the defense in 2020 because of the pandemic.
And I do think Ryan Day made the absolute right move with maybe a little over a week removed from the 2021 Michigan game. He made the change. He made changes that he thought were necessary. And I do think the Jim Knowles, and I will still say this, the Jim Knowles hire was the right one. Perry Eliano, Tim Walton coming over. That defense has been better this season. And I do think there still needs to be some patience with Jim Knowles talking to Ryan Day about getting the guys, the proper personnel to run that system.
I would say this with the defense.
Because a running back isn't it at linebacker, to your point.
Outside of the D-line, which I still think is a pretty high caliber player on Ohio State, although they may not have shown it today, I think the recruiting on the defensive side of the ball leaves something to be desired from the Urban Meyer era. Remember when we had NFL guys playing corner for us?
I do.
And we don't have that anymore.
No.
Ohio State doesn't have that. I'm not Ohio State.
I understand what you mean.
When you lose to Michigan, it all comes into you.
There are a lot of
you
feelings that I would recommend all fans feel their feelings right now. Like you are all on the couch, and I am your therapist. Because I don't feel feelings a lot when my teams lose anymore, because I'm just so jaded and cynical with life that really only the Cavaliers blowing it to the Bucks in the third quarter of a regular season basketball game
feelings.
gets me like,
people tweet like deep in my feelings. That's never you
it's
anymore.
Just not me anymore with sports. And I would again also recommend nobody be like me. So we're just getting that out there right now. But
we wouldn't have jobs if people didn't care this much.
Feel how whatever you're feeling right now is perfectly fine for you to feel. And I do think in the next couple of days there will be there will be better perspective, and there will be better analysis on or a better post-mortem, I guess the better word to use there. And I think that the Fire Ryan Day crowd, while all up in arms right now, like there are torches and pitchforks heading to his house, well, just relax, and come Monday, it'll be he is the right guy, I believe.
Also, don't do anything to his house.
Yeah, don't.
If you're somebody who's thinking about that, just don't. That's
don't.
Unnecessary. I would not support that at all. Do not do that. I'm mad at Ryan Day right now, but that's as a football coach, not as a person.
Do you have a go-to? Did you? So I'm going to digress really quickly here, but this might not be quick.
Catch my drift.
When Iowa lost to Nebraska yesterday.
Why'd you bring that up?
Because I want to do an experiment here. Did you have a certain thing that you listened to, or a movie you watched, or something that you took your thoughts off of what had just happened at Kinnick Stadium?
When I get in these moods,
because this could be helpful to Ohio State fans right now who are looking for something, because I would not turn on your televisions and watch football.
A lot of Gin Blossoms.
Okay.
A lot of who sings Slide? The Why Don't You Slide? What band is that? Those 90s breakup songs.
Okay.
Those are the ones that I lean towards. No.
I know, right. Let me get it on Spotify.
That one, and then like I said, Gin Blossoms, you get a lot of Third Eye Blind, that kind of stuff. For some reason, I think the 90s.
It's the Goo Goo Dolls.
The Goo Goo Dolls, yes.
Wake up where you are.
That's how I'm feeling. That's in my head.
Anything at all. Can I offer you Far Behind by Candlebox?
I probably know the song. I do not know.
To treat you so bad, but I did it anyway.
I just, when I'm in my sports feels, it's the 90s breakup songs.
I was just thinking about what more productive things could we be doing than screaming about the head coach of Ohio State right now? Because this is bad.
I'll probably go home and rake leaves in the dark tonight.
Don't do that.
That's how I feel.
Especially as a dog owner, if you're feeling that, do not do that in the dark.
Do not rake leaves in the dark.
Because there are landmines. You might think of yourself as the best pooper scooper in your yard, in your neighborhood. You try to rake now, poop on the shoe.
Kit has already broken 2 ornaments off the tree, by the way, from her excitement.
No, you know why? It's because you decorated before December. You decorated after
protesting.
Thanksgiving. You set yourself up for pain.
So we're talking about Ryan Day and his hot seat. Can you give us a little update on what's going else?
So the carousel has been spinning today. I'm sure if you woke up and watched College Game Day or the Big Noon Kick, you did hear the official news about Matt Rule as the new head coach at Nebraska.
Quick, Illinois is not going to lose to Northwestern, so the Hawkeyes' chances of the Big Ten title are completely gone.
Okay, so
they're up 41-3 in the fourth quarter.
Because right now, I think Purdue is beating Indiana by 14.
Okay, so if Purdue wins, they're in. If Illinois wins and Purdue loses, they're in. But both those teams look like they're going to win, so Iowa's chances.
It's 24-10 with 3 and change left to go.
Back to coaching carousel.
Matt Rule is in the Big Ten. Signs an 8-year contract with Nebraska. So he was on game day making that announcement official. I think that's a good hire for the Cornhuskers.
I think he's a great recruiter.
I think he's going to be able to. He did it at Temple. He did it at Baylor. Obviously, it didn't work out in the NFL, but I can name you a bunch of head coaches in the NFL that came from the college ranks that fell on their faces in the NFL.
Baylor, he had to raise from the dead.
Yes.
Like after everything that happened with Art Briles.
This is kind of similar with the Nebraska program
without
that won 4
controversy too,
games.
so it's even a little easier.
And you have so much support behind them because even with this season just taking a complete tank, week 1. I guess
did Nebraska win 4 games?
1, yes.
I must have missed that
They
fourth
were,
win. Who did they beat?
Are you sure?
Did they play yesterday?
They might have.
I don't remember that.
I'm sorry.